Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to this end-to-end crash course about Redux Toolkit. So in this video we'll be explaining of course what is a Redux Toolkit and how we can get it set up locally and why we should be using it in our React application. And also when we are doing our local setup, we will go step by step, small pieces, so we can get basic understanding why we are also getting our setup done, not just going through it and copy and paste. Assuming that you are familiar with React, and please if not, don't feel overwhelmed. I got a fundamental tutorial about React and the latest version as well, which you can go through it and can help you to set up your first React application easily. So let's jump into it. First things first, let's understand what is Redux and what is used for. So Redux Toolkit, it is just a state management system that works outside of our React application. Okay, so what that means. Let me open the code so I can explain you better. So we created here an application, which is very basic application, where it have my count and it have my output. And what I will do, I run this locally already. I'll run that in my browser and that's what it is. So basically my count, what it does, it just increments or decrement a number and it starts from 0 as default. And we have an output component which I want also to output that count value. So in count components, currently how it's working, we have a local state in here where we set whenever we click the minus and plus. So we have here a function decrement, so I'm making it less with 1, and here increment, which I make it more with 1. But as you can see, these ones are only changing the state in this count, which means this state I can't access it from another component, which in our example at the moment we have it in here in output. So I want to be able to access here my count and display it here. So how I can do that? So there are different ways at the moment, because in our scenario we can just, I don't know, add a function here which comes from app and set up a state here and put that state into output. So it's a lot of back and forth to make sure we are passing that value. In other scenarios, you will not even have like siblings components. You might have different routes or different pages and different complex architecture, which you can't just access that value. And that's when the Redux state management comes in. So basically what it is, it's just a store that you create, which is outside of your React component, and you create your variables or your states that are here, which you create them as states in the outside store, and directly you change that state. And that state you can access from any place in your React application, from any components, from any routes, from anywhere you want. So that's what state management system is for. That's what is Redux Toolkit for. It's just a place where you can store your data and make sure it is accessible through your whole application without creating some issues or bugs, or which will be even difficult to find the source of their problems, or even will not be able to access those details if we don't have the Redux Toolkit. So how we can do that? We will go step by step, but overall idea how it is, you'll have a store created, and that store will manage in a way that you create some functions in there which are called reducers when you're talking about state management. So they have special names. We don't call them functions, we call them reducers, but remember they are just functions in the end. And those functions, what they will do, instead of calling this one here, which is a function local, we'll be calling that reducer, which will do for us all this setup and will change for us that state in our Redux store, and then we can read that state from the Redux store itself directly in here and render it here and also render it in our output component. So what will be next? How we can get our setup done? I have this application which is created using Create React App, and I have uploaded here, and what I will do in the description so you can know what happened after the creation of the React App. I'm pushing this one in the main, and the one which will have the changes of Redux Store will be pushed with different branch. So I'll keep that branch link as well in the description for your reference. What we'll do, we'll follow the documentation here, and we'll do that in our application as well. So let me save this, make sure everything working as it should be. Okay, nice. Now let's go back here, and what we need to do first thing is that install the toolkit and also the actual React Redux. So let's do that. Copy, and you can go to your terminal, or you can go to your Visual Studio Code terminal and install it. Nice, that's done. The next thing we have to do is create your Redux store. So you can create anywhere you want. So here the standard following is they're creating under app, and what we'll do, we'll just go under source and we'll create our store in here. So I'll call it store.js, same name, new file, store.js, but again you can call it anything you want, and I will just copy and paste this code here. So what it's doing is it's taking, oh no, I'm not using TypeScript, I'm using JavaScript. So I'll just copy this one actually and paste it in here. So they're just importing a configure store from the toolkit, and then you have the reducer here. So the reducer here later, when we create our reducer, we'll just add a link to them here. That's all. And all this configuration we're doing at the moment, it's just one-time configuration. As soon as you do it first time, you don't have to touch it again. So don't feel like overwhelmed and you have to do all these things again next time. It's just one time, and then you just keep importing your reducers here. So now we created our store, we need to wrap our application with this store. So our application, our React components or routes can access the values or the state in this store. So it makes sense, we'll be going to our root, which is app.js, actually, which is index.js. And what we'll do, I'll just copy paste this one. So we need to add the store, and we need to add the provider from Redux Store. So I will go here, but I know my store is not from app, it will be in the same route, it's from store. And then you have to wrap your app with this provider. So I'll come here and say provider, and it have attribute of store, which you give it the store you created. And close it down. We have to wrap our app application inside this provider. Okay, and that's what is in here. So here is, I can see some error. This I can't resolve.store in here. So let me see why. And that's because I created the store outside of source file. It needs to be inside my source file. I'll just move it in there, and that should be good. So now it's successful. Good. Next thing is we need to create our Redux slice. Okay, so what is a Redux state slice? So before, when we was having Redux, not Redux Toolkit, we used to create a different folder for the state, and we create a different folder for something called actions, and we create a different folder for reducers. So what the hell is all that? So, so the state basically is the value, the variable you want to keep changing and accessing. The actions is the action you trigger from your component that will talk to your reducer, which will do the action. Okay, and don't feel overwhelmed. We'll do one by one, and it will make more sense to you, step by step. And then we had reducers file, where we create our reducers, which we say they are just functions, which we tell them what actions we want to happen, what it should be doing. Okay, so we had like separate files for each and everything, which was nice at that time. It was beautiful, but in new way of Redux Toolkit is much prettier, and it's much readable and more organized and easy also to look at it and debug it and do changes easily within just one file. So in the Redux slice, in this example, what they did is just create a name for it. You can name it anything you want, and this is your state, which is this one, which are actionable variables you want to be changing and or storing or so on. And then you have your reducers, and these ones are the actions of that reducers. And you see these ones, that's what they do. Okay, and you see here, like for example, we have increments and we have decrements, which are just incrementing, like the increment one is increasing the state with 1, and the decrement, they are decreasing the state by 1. And then you will come to the third one, which looks a bit different, which we are not passing only the state, we are passing the action. And as I told you before, we use something called actions. And that's one for something extra, where you need to pass some data to your reducer from your React app that needed to do something. Okay, and this one we will need in the scenario where we come here and actually write a number. So when we write actually here a number, then we need to send an action with that number, which will pass it to my Redux state and add it to my actual state. So it's not just we know by default to be incrementing and decrementing, but there is some value to be sent, and that's what we need, actions. And again, don't feel overwhelmed, don't feel it's too much, you don't need to repeat my video and listen to this again. We'll be doing these things in step by step, so we can get to understand how this works. So let's go back here. So what I will do, I'll just create my counter slice. Okay, I will come to count and I'll create a new file. I will count it my count slice.js, and in here I'll just copy paste this one for now. And what I will do, I will just rename my function this counter slice, because I know I'm name it differently and I like to keep the names consistent. And I'll keep it counted here. My initial state here is have value as a state. If you have bigger projects, of course value it will not make sense for you, you have to name it something meaningful. I'll call it count as I name it in my local state here, because that will make sense for me, and I start from 0 all the time. And then I know that in the reducers I'll have increments, I'll keep it same, I'll have decrements, and also have by amount, so I'll keep them all same. Then if you come here, you'll find that they are exporting your actions. So these are the actions they're exporting. So these are actually actions, and what's happening inside is the reducer function itself, what it should be doing with that action. So what we are doing is we are exporting these actions because we need them to trigger the reducer functions, and then in here we're exporting as default my count slice dot reducers, or dot reducer actually. Okay, because this counter slice is made, or the count slice is made from create slice, which is coming from Redux Toolkit, and that one is an object which have actions and have reducer, and there's something running behind which match up all these things for you, so you don't have to do it manually. Now we created our slice, I'll save. We have to add our reducer to our store. If you remember first time we created, I told you we need to add stores here whenever we add one. Okay, so how to add a slice reducer to your store? It's easy, straightforward. You import it. So I'll import my count slice. And I know it's from count and count slice. And then here you will come in the return reducer and name anything you want, and then pass on your reducer. So here I can see they imported the whole reducer because they can access everything. So what I will do, I will just see what name I have in my reducer. So basically you just use this one and add a reducer to it, and you can name it again anything you want. So just go here, count slice, I'll just say it's count reducer. And I'll come here, and this is my reducers, and I'll say I'm exporting a new reducer, which I'll call it anything you want. Again, I'll say count reducer also. And oops, I'll just copy this one. But as you can see, the names are the same, which makes some confusion for some people. So I'll just call it here count slice reducer, and I'll save it. Now, how we can use the Redux state and actions in our actual React component? right? So first things, we need a way how we can trigger our actions. So which we have here, so these actions, and let's try by the incrementing one, the plus one, and we try implement that first. So I will go to my components itself, and I will remove all this code here, and I will import, let's see what's the name. I'll say increment, import increment from my count slice, and I will say here on the click of the plus I want to increment. Just remove this so it doesn't break it for me. Okay, so now saying count is not defined because here I'm trying to read this variable which is not defined. So how we can read that? To read that, you can use something called use selector, and you can say, okay, in this selector I will select this state from this reducer. So let me use this imported, and I will say, for example, const count use selector, and I'll say read the state of my store, and I want the state dot count dot, and I will see what the variable name I created. So it is dot count. And here, sorry, it should be this name here, counter. So here it should be counter. And let's cancel log this, or actually let's try to print it on the screen immediately, which is same. Okay, let's save, and seems to be working. And no, it didn't work. I found that actually the name we use here in our counter slice, we don't use that, but actually how we access our state. And remember that whatever name you call here for your reducer, that's what you use. That's how you access your states. Okay, so what I did here in my count, I use selector, check my Redux state, and in my Redux state you find this reducer, which is count slice reducer, which is this one again, remember that one. And then inside this, I know we have a state called count. So I'm saying, okay, access this reducer and give me that state. So use selector, state map through it. When you access the count slice reducer, give me the count. And now I can see it here. And for the actual button for the increment, so the way we do here, like they say, you import and use dispatch, and then you create a dispatch constant that point to that function. And on click of those buttons, you just create an arrow function that point to that dispatch, and then you call the function or the action that you imported from your slice file. Okay, so that's what we have done. Good thing is, now let's go back to our app and see, I'm clicking but it's not working, and I assume I know the reason why. If I go back to my slice, so this is my state, the count, and if I come to the increment, I'm saying for me increment the value state. Okay, I'm not saying the count, I'm saying the value, which I don't have here, and I'm not reading there as well. So this one should be count, and also this one, and also this one. Save it. Now let's do it. So you see it's working. Good. Now if I click minus, of course will not work. And I hope now you can figure out how we do it. And let's try again one by one. So we have decrement. That's a function or the action that will trigger my reducer to reduce 1, okay, from the current count. So I will copy this one, decrement action, and I will try to import it here. So I say comma, import from me decrement, and then I will come here to my button and I will say on click, I want to dispatch or trigger arrow function. Oops. that will dispatch for me this function. I will save, and let's see if this works. So if I do this, and it is working. Good. Now let's see how we can do the third one. So as you can see, this one we don't send anything here, but in this third scenario we will be entering the actual value, which means our Redux state need to know what is the user input. Therefore, our action that we're triggering from here will be taking some data back to our Redux state, where the reducer will manage it and handle our state. First thing, we need an onChange function for this input field. So I'll come here and say onChange, and I'll create a function called handle counter input, and I'll create this function, and that will expect an event object. And here what we will do, we'll use this function here. So we'll say increment by amount. I will do this one, but not actually like that. We need to dispatch again, and we call that function, and this function is expecting an action, if you remember. So payload. So we'll be sending that amount here as e.target.value. Good. And what will go here, and what I found that we will not be really using this one, because not be increasing, we just direct input. So what I will create another one, direct input, and I will say it does exactly this, but slightly different thing. So it just prints same value I'm doing. So action, and it will be equal that action, and I have to export this, and I will import it in here. Okay, good. Now let's see if this works. So if I do this, it works, but if I come here now, 1, 2, 3, and still I can see it there. And if I do plus, it's adding up. And the reason why, when we pass this value from here, it's passing as a string, so it's now string plus number, so it keeps now adding everything as a strings. So what I have to do, I have to make sure when I pass this one, it's getting stored as a number. So I come here, I will say parse for me this one, parse int, and then do this. Now come back here again, enter 1, 2, 3, 4, try to increment it. No, it's working, and decrement it is working. Now let's see how we can use this function where we are adding up. Okay, so what I will do, I will go to my components, I will create another button here, and I will say increment by 10, for example. And I suppose now you know what we'll be doing. Again, we'll create onClick function. I'll just copy paste this one, but we'll be dispatching a different action, so we'll be using now this one, and I will come here to paste it here and import it, and here I will be passing 10. So here we have 1233. If I come and click here, 1243, I click here, 1253. So basically that's how it is. It's very simple, straightforward. Even we took this much time today because we're explaining and we're going through it, and we did this initial setup. Still, it didn't take us much time, and as much you use it, it will be like your lifesaver. Even you will be avoiding your local state and just be wanting to use the Redux Toolkit.
legend.